And so getting inside of those communities is going to be really important. And eventually the financial advisor can come out and just say, hey, yeah, like I know your guys' problem because I'm meeting with so many of you and I know what you're dealing with and I know what your families are going to deal with. When you start considering where is the younger generation getting this source of wealth, look at the media. You have essentially mass media at your fingertips. And so then you're able to get in front of hundreds to thousands to millions to billions of people just by posting something on the internet.
Welcome, everybody, to Inside the Flows. I'm your host, Iyassu, and I'm with special guest Ryan Chand at Element Wealth Management. Welcome, Ryan.
Good morning, Iyassu. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. It's good to have you back on this Friday morning, March 27th. How are you feeling this week?
Doing good. No, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be back. It's always a pleasure talking to you. I know we always get into some tangents and stuff, so I'm looking forward to today's conversation too.
Yeah, we really missed you the past couple weeks. The big thing was Future Proof that came up, and I was
Mhm.
down in Miami. It's the Future Proof Citywide event, and
Yeah.
yeah, I really thought about you during there because this time I did something different for the Future Proof breakthrough meetings, which is like the speed dating event.
Sure.
Prior to joining prior to the meetings, the way I set up my profile was I was really interested in meeting advisors who had a practice less than 100 million. And so I met with a lot of folks. I think I had like 24 meetings, and a couple, actually several of them were on the entrepreneurial side. So these guys were around like 30 years old, 34 years old, and they started up their own practices like on their own. And I was like, oh
Hmm.
man, like, this reminds me of hanging out with Ryan and having that fresh new fresh new voice and fresh new face and
Yeah.
in the space, and it was really cool, man. So I mean, I know it's in Miami, but I wish I would have been able to introduce you to some of these guys.
No, I appreciate that, and that's super cool. I mean, once you actually go down the history of why advisors are the place that they are to serve their clients, everything starts to make sense. And, from a household perspective on how many households you serve and no matter what amount of assets you manage, it makes sense about how you actually show up and serve your clients on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's really cool. And I'm glad you were talking to younger generation because as you know, with the older generation stepping out within the next 10 to 15 years, there's going to be a mass migration of younger individuals, younger advisors in the industry that will be here to step up, and they have to step up. We have to step up. And so it's important for us to be talking to you guys, learning and continue doing all these things so that way we can also implement it for ourselves. So I think that's really cool. So I'm glad you guys had a good time.
Yeah, and on top of that, the great wealth transfer that's going to happen. So there's going to be, less advisors but more money to manage. I keep saying
Hmm.
that over and over again. Are you familiar with Cerulli Associates?
Don't believe so.
So they're this research shop that the way I like to think of them is like they're the McKinsey of wealth management, and less so on the consulting side, but more so on the research. And they had a
Hmm.
webinar they put on last week, or sorry, this past week, where they were talking about how there's been a move from affluent households to high net worth households that they haven't seen in decades. And so like there's a lot more younger people becoming a lot more wealthier, like moving from the 5 million to the 30 million
Hmm.
total net worth. And it was a really fascinating presentation that they put on. And I think about folks like you who are kind of in the early tales of your early innings, I should say, of your career, and how good of a path you have for like the next like
Sure.
40 years. Like, it's
Yeah.
it's it's going to be real good for you.
No, it's super I find that super interesting as well. When you start considering where is the younger generation getting this source of wealth, look at the media. You have essentially mass media at your fingertips, and so then you're able to get in front of hundreds to thousands to millions to billions of people just by posting something on the internet. Before, you just used to be a newspaper ad or something like that you happen to cross by someone or you get brought up in conversation. Now you don't have that. So it's I'd attribute a lot of that to social media, and I think it's cool. But at the same time, it also places an importance for the shrinking middle class to also step up and say, hey, what am I doing differently? Especially if you're in the entrepreneurial space in the middle class, you have to start thinking about what tools, what arrows you want to have in your quiver to start putting yourself and getting yourself ahead. And things like social media and doing, meeting people in person, continue doing those things that you need to do. It'd be super important.
Yeah, and then listening and reading blogs like, Think with Ryan, that helps a lot.
But yeah,
Uh,
good plug right there.
I just for the audience members to know, we're going to talk a little bit about it later, but Ryan has this newsletter that he puts out on LinkedIn, and it's pretty cool. It's like you get a deeper insight into Ryan's thoughts and thought processes and ideas, and it's called Think with
Great.
Ryan. And
Yeah,
yeah, it's a pretty cool one. It'll be our special topic today, but yeah, I thought I'd throw that one in there. Yeah, so it's good to have you back, Ryan.
appreciate it. Thank you. And thanks for telling me about the conference too. Glad it was a good time.
Yeah, it was a great time. We'll catch you there. Maybe the Huntington Beach one, which is a little closer to us than
Yeah,
Miami.
there we go.
All right, so let's kick off the weekly recap before we touch our special topic. There was a very interesting week this week, and I think one of the first things that came out that caught my attention was this Barron's piece regarding Jamie Dimon and J.P. Morgan. And Jamie Dimon was signaling when he's thinking about retiring, which would be a huge thing for the industry. For most folks that don't know Jamie Dimon, he's just this rock star banker. He's been at the helm of J.P. Morgan for forever and has led it through multiple cycles and did a pretty good job at doing it. He's had a steady hand, and he's gone through a number of kind of financial crisis events that have strengthened the bank. One of the things that Jamie said was 4 years is where he's thinking, 3-4 years, and then he might step down. But he also said something else that's really interesting, which was they're spending, I think it was $20 billion on technology. So why does that matter to advisors? Well, it's like JP Morgan's a big wirehouse. And if you're an independent RIA, your big competitor is spending $20 billion on AI and technology and whatnot. And there's this outspend that you have to kind of think about if you're competing with a wirehouse. And so I thought that was like pretty cool that, he's able to say like, hey, look, we're doing this and I might be taking off, but here's a war chest that I'm going to be like, distributing in the next year. So,
Mhm.
all these advisors who are thinking about, upping their game on technology, like, you're going to have to do it because there's going to be less human resources for you in the future, but more money to manage and more households to manage. So, be conscious of what you're picking when you embed it into your practice.
Yeah, and I think the most practical way for people to think about this, about the actual implementation of AI, specifically for advisors, is this use case, which I actually went across this way. This is really important because a practical use case for advisors. As advisors know, there is so much information that you have to go over that comes across your desk. You have a list of products and you have to have product knowledge. You have to have experience. You've got to have experience knowledge. You have to know all these things about estate planning and taxes and all this stuff. And just taking it down to a super simple level for Jamie Dimon, what I did was I needed to compare two different ETFs and mutual funds. What I did was I put it into Claude and I said, give me a CFA level research analysis on these two funds. And I put that on Claude and I put that on ChatGPT. What it spit out for me is already incredible to think about. Hey, if we're going to start putting $20 billion towards it, who knows where that's going to guide us towards. That's the really important part about where this next development of AI is going to take place. Is it going to take jobs? Well, it's starting to put CFA level research available into advisors' hands. It's helping us make better educated decisions because we can't know everything. We can't happen to research everything all at once. And this stuff is doing it. It's being able to deliver it on a silver platter, saying, this is some of the information, but continue to still do your own research. And that at least just gives us, the advisor, what we want at that moment without having to get on a phone, call a wholesaler or anything like that. We're able just to have it right there.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, these organizations that these AI models are being trained on or trained off of. So like does the CFA society get a cut out of this? Like cuz I'm pretty sure like in order to spit out an answer that you just you just got, Ryan, they had to have spit in some, like, CFA tests or manuals or books or something, right? Like,
No, yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff are like are language models. So this stuff is just taking things that are already on the internet, and all this stuff is public information. So none of what ChatGPT or Claude is making, none of it's making unique recommendations. It's just summarizing what they've seen on what it's seen on the internet and proposing it as something for you. And just because you put in your little ChatGPT search, it's not actually tailored to you. It's just coming up with something that it's already seen on the internet. It just learns a little bit about you and what you want to see. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing that, especially if you start thinking about ChatGPT and OpenAI considering putting ads and paywalls on their searches and stuff.
here we go, here we go.
Is why the $20 billion to get in and start doing all that stuff, it's going to be. I wouldn't be surprised if it burned pretty quick.
Yeah, 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 I think and also, one thing I've noticed about the AI models, whether it's Gemini or ChatGPT, they still struggle on the creative side. So
Hmm.
what I tend to find is if you ask them to do something on the, creatively visual or think of a new name, or it just always reverts back to the mean. So it's like I guess it just plays safe no matter what answer it gives. And
Hmm.
with creatives, like they don't. They creatives walk out of the the average and they go down their own path. And AI models they're not equipped to do that kind of stuff yet. So if you're in the creative space, even within your own industry as an analyst, or you don't have to be just like a painter or something or a music artist. Like, if you're in a creative spot in your firm, I think you're safe for quite a while.
Yeah, I think I don't know what you said was made me think about that a little bit differently. Where it's AI is meant to stay within the guardrails of what you're asking it to do. Like I've seen certain influencers on social media say, "Hey, AI, can you count to 10 for me?" And then it can only count to 3, and then it'll stop every single time. But creative writers will try and break out. They will try to, almost like satire and stuff like that. You want to break out of the norm, almost kind of clickbaity, but also the whole point in creative marketing is also creating something, creating content that people actually think is quality as well, not just clickbait garbage, AI slop. So yeah, I think that's really cool. And I think that's a really cool input there that the creative marketers will be needed. I would say at least for the next close period of time here because it's just not where we need it to be or want it to be for AI to be creative at all.
Totally agree. Looking at the midweek, we had a couple of interesting articles about just wealth generation, and one of them was 430,000 households are now worth $30 million or more, and that's pretty big for the United States, and that's a pretty decent jump in growth in those households from about 10 years ago. And a lot of it's driven by private investments and just valuations from of the small to mid-sized businesses that they're involved in. So back in the day, let's just call it the 60s and 70s, like a lot of wealth generation what happened at the like the house level, like you owned a house and you bought it at 500,000, it's now worth 2 million. But these, this group's different. They've gotten a lot of their wealth in stocks, and then also just private businesses that they're either in or they're invested in from a private equity standpoint, like big umbrella private equity standpoint. And it's just a pretty big explosion in numbers. And if you can think about how that impacts the economy, we'll just think, you're starting to see a lot more, um, you know, private offerings. You're seeing airplanes that are making more availability for first class or business class seats. You're seeing, VIP, tickets for events that are costing, multiples of hundreds of dollars. Things like that start to show up once these households start making a lot, or a lot more people start making a lot more money. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And there was, I don't know, are you seeing that also on your end, Ryan, with either industry newsletters or just work that you're doing? Just a lot more households breaching into that 30 million territory.
So there is a shrinking middle class, and once you start thinking about why it happened and where it happened to, it starts exactly where you said it does. What was the previous generation doing? They were buying real assets. They were doing things that were considered undervalued, stuff that they could technically and probably and realistically speaking could afford. Nowadays, you look at home prices are astronomically high because we don't have enough supply for them. Supply and demand, that's just simple. And so you start to think about why did this wealth gap start to widen? Well, it's because people were still exploring in the 60s, 70s, 80s. People were still going from one side of the country to the other side of the country, hoping to find something new, and they did. Nowadays, that stuff again is at our fingertips. I'm able to know I can know what's going on in New York right now just by going onto my smartphone, logging on to like Instagram, Facebook, or whatever, and pull up a live stream or pull up something, and I can know exactly what's going on there, what news headlines are popular there right now. That stuff has broken down. So instead of being able to go somewhere and start something from scratch, you you can essentially just plant yourself there digitally. And that's why you're starting to see these astronomically high valuations on some people's estates. It's because that they're able to implant themselves in so many locations at once, despite not even physically being there. And so if you can work while not actually being there, I would say that's a plus. Yeah, I mean, it's almost like having chatbots doing your work. But that can happen. And, it's interesting how my generation is getting their hands on this type of wealth. Um, but a lot of that is attributed to digital media.
Yeah, I think also, let's not forget, like, kind of our history lesson. There's this, like, famous, chart graph that or line chart, graph that shows basically, like, who's capturing all the productivity gains in the United States. Is it income or is it capital? And then you see, like, back in the, I think it's like the 60s, maybe it's 50s, but you see this huge break or a huge split between how capital is capturing most of the productivity gains from a value creation standpoint. I think that's also a big part of, why these households are, there's more households getting into these, like, ultra high net worth categories because you've had capital making all the gains, income staying flat, and then when you have, you know, like financial crises happening, and then the Federal Reserve just starts printing money. Well, who do they give the money to first? They give it to banks, right? And then the banks are like, all right, well, we're going to start loaning this stuff out to kind of juice the economy. And so basically, who gets the money first? It's capital gets the money first, and then you have asset inflation, right? So
Yeah,
stocks become.
I would also throw in those that have the propensity to spend also get it first. So think back to COVID. What happened during COVID with stimulus? We had to we had to encourage spending again. How do you do that? How do you get circulating dollars around? You have to give it to people that will spend money. You have to give it to families that will spend money. So that's the whole reason why it happened. And so when you start thinking about why it's gone to capital and where it's going to go to people, when it's going to go to people, again, we were coming from a generation that bought real assets, and from there then on out, it's going to go into more equity ownership. It's going to go into other stuff. Why? Because they already have the basic, you know, the the fundamental things you buy once you graduate college and you develop a family. You're going to buy a house and do this type of stuff. You're able to look onwards, and so then once they have that, you can tell your kids to do the same thing, or just buy equities, buy do this, do that, and it's just that that helps tell the story that you're saying exactly.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things to do during the COVID was to go on Wall Street Bets and just read.
Yeah,
They call it, like, stimmy checks. They're like, "Yeah, I'm gonna use my stimmy check to buy this, like, altcoin that's DeFi, and I'm gonna
sure.
I'm gonna make it, guys." Like, or sorry, Wag is it WAGMI? We're all gonna make it. Yeah, yeah, WAGMI. We're all gonna make it,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah, like you can have your own opinion about whether that was the correct decision or not, but fundamentally that was the reason why. they did what they did. Was it the correct one? I don't know. That's not for me to decide. It just also just comes down to a political decision, really, what political side you live on. Um, but that's why political economy is so interesting to me. And, you could have all these opinions, and none of it's right. So
Is tendies still a word that the cool kids use? Because that was a
tendies.
funny one. Yeah, yeah. Like the chicken tenders, they would call their gains tendies because they're so good. It was
Yeah.
funny, man. It was really funny. I think also like it made me realize that when you have these like asset inflation events, then people just they go way, way, way onto the risk curve. So,
Hmm.
forget GameStop. People are like investing in crypto, which is like super on the risk curve, like super duper high risk. But why is that, right? It's because the other asset classes aren't, paying enough, right? So, it's just yeah, that was a really funny time for me, and I very much enjoyed Wall Street Bets subreddit on Reddit. There's some good memes in there.
No, totally, totally. But like drawing this back to the article, the people that were and able to participate in that type of stuff were on the, I would say, up on the upper tier of that wealth gap widening. They were, not saying we're uber rich or anything like that, but we have a comfortable livelihood, and that just, you know, further highlights how big of a difference there is between us and the uber wealthy.
Yeah.
Talk about hundreds of millions of within the bank, if not just tens of millions. That wealth gap is widening, and even though we may have a comfortable livelihood, being able to go shop at Nordstrom's or Macy's and just go buy a shirt or shoes or whatever we need at whatever time, there's something astronomically different going on, and that's it's definitely happening. I mean, happening. I mean, you see it with uh, athletes, you see it with actors and actresses, you see it with in so many different industries of what people are getting paid, and you start to wonder when's it going to stop.
Yeah.
What's the
Yeah.
cap?
There's like that behavioral finance aspect of it too, where I bet you if you go to these one of these like $30 million households and say like, do you feel wealthy? And depending on where the stock market's at, they're gonna give you like a different answer, right? If it's down, they're like, oh no, man, I don't feel wealthy at all. But if it's up, 20%, they're like, oh yeah, things are great, man. I'm spending.
Yeah. Yeah, some people say wealth is health, but it's just.
The other part of the midweek story was there was an interesting kind of not long read, but it was a good read about dentists. So like, I don't know if you saw that article, but like, there's like dentists are like, struggling at the beginning of their careers financially because they're just laid on with debt in order to become a dentist. That they're pulling like mid six figure salaries, but they're kind of on paper they're poor, and they don't like at least in the Wall Street Journal article, it made it seem like they did not want to use financial advisors because they're so much in debt. They're like, what's the point? But then at the end of it, it's like, well, they kind of do need a financial advisor because at some point that debt's gone, and then they have all these like sprawling, businesses that they're involved in that needs managing. And so I
Mhm,
thought that was just like a funny. It was almost like an anecdotal story to this like 430,000 households with $30 million. So like, yeah, dentists are
mhm.
part of that kind of group. Did you have any thoughts on that
Yeah,
article?
no, I was reading that with a smile on my face because it made me think about whenever I go to my dentist, I'm laying in the chair and I've got my mouth open. He's putting the tools in my mouth. He's asking me stuff about work and the market, what my perspective on this is, what my perspective. I'm like, dude, I can't talk right now. But it made me want to send the article to him because it's we're always talking about stuff like that. It's definitely on their minds. Obviously, as they start to develop their own families, and once they have their own practice or join a practice or do that, and they're able to start making progress on their debt and continue living the life they want to live, that it's it makes a natural conversation bound to happen. But whether or not uh, whether they connect to advisors or not, it's up to them.
I thought one of the things that really stuck out to me about that article was there was a part where he talks about being plugged into a group of dentists and it's like 20, maybe it's 24,000. It's a lot of people, and they're
Yeah.
just giving each other financial advice in there. And I'm like, oh man, that would be a gold mine for wealth managers to somehow, get in there and be like, yo, guys, we can actually help you out. Like, I know there's some horror
Yeah.
stories in here, but I don't think that's a unique case. I think a lot of industry groups have these Facebook groups or Reddit subreddit groups that are trying to help each other out, and it speaks to the level of trust that I think individuals who are coming into these new kind of wealth levels have with the wealth management space. And I think there's
Mhm.
like a really good opportunity there, Ryan, for advisors, planners, wealth managers to kind of build trust within these groups that are DIYing it. Which
Mhm.
in my I think DIYing it's great for folks who don't have the income or the asset level to justify a financial advisor, right? They can go
Mhm.
robo, they can go, whatever their banker is like telling them. But for those who have a lot of money to lose, it's like, a financial advisor probably would be good for you, or a wealth manager, whatever title you want to give it. So I think it's like a great opportunity for, wealth managers and advisors to kind of build new trust with these groups, because I'm starting to see more and more of them pop up. It's not just dentists, it's like, folks in the tech industry,
Mhm.
folks in sports, right? It's a lot of groups that I'm starting to see that are just relying on each other to make really, really big financial decisions for their households.
No, I think that's a perfect transition into uh, why uh, why people believe that financial advisory is only for the uber wealthy. You have to have millions or tens of millions or to be able to have a financial advisor, and that's strictly not the case. It's also the reason why so many financial advisors are more referral based. Because it takes trust in order for a prospect or client to reach out to you and be able to trust you with their life savings. It's a big ask. And, once you start thinking about, okay, well, why would someone reach out? Well, if I know, Joe, who's my best friend, has been my best friend since, middle school or something like that, high school, and he has a financial advisor and it happened to be his parents' financial advisor. Well, I'm going to feel naturally inclined that since I've known Joe for so long, that he can, he can relate to me. His advisor be able to relate to me because his advisor took care of their family. So he's going to take care of me the same way. That is why our industry is so referral based rather than just looking up on the internet saying what advisor is the best advisor near me and hoping the first person that you click on that's probably a sponsored result is going to be the best fit for you. That takes a lot of risk and takes a lot of vetting. So that's why I would always encourage clients and prospects to do your own research, do your own digging, do your own interviewing, see who you like, see who you want to be managing your wealth. There's no size that's too small when every dollar has to have a job and start thinking about this widening wealth gap. Well, what are you going to do to start, shrinking that down again? You got to get ahead. Well, the only way you're going to get ahead is by doing the things you need to do. And if that requires a financial advisor, I'm not saying it does, but if that does require a financial advisor, you have to be able to start stepping out of your comfort zone and reaching out for help. Maybe asking friends around, hey, do you know any financial advisors? See if you can get a referral. Start that way. You can start building that comfortability, or do your own research online and do your own interview process. Ask an advisor these tough questions. If you don't know what to ask the more personal stuff. Hey, if this happens, am I going to be okay? What's going to happen? What do you think is going to happen here with this or whatnot? You'll naturally find out that a lot of advisors are really comfortable having these normal human conversations because it is our job, it is our responsibility to provide the most amount of information we can so that way clients can make the most fully educated decision they can. We're not, making these decisions in a black box for our clients. It is our clients that we are trying to boost and make them feel good about their decision making. It makes no sense for us just to be operating in a black box where the clients have no idea what we're doing, why we're doing what, mid, small, large cap, emerging market. It it's pointless, and so none of it really. shows where the rubber meets the road, other than just building those familial relationships with a financial advisor. And so getting inside of those communities is going to be really important. And eventually the financial advisor can come out and just say, hey, yeah, like I know your guys' problem because I'm meeting with so many of you and I know what you're dealing with. And I know what your families are going to deal with. So if anything in the case were to happen to you, we're here to help support your family as well, and support that transition. So everything starts to make sense, but it's very difficult for the average advisor to get in those types of communities and get in those groups.
Yeah. I think wrapping up the week, it's the same old story. It's oil prices, and it feels like I'm a broken record here, but the conflict happening in the Middle East. There's more, um, I'd say, energy infrastructure that's coming offline in the Middle East, which will impact the global economy, particularly Europe first. And if Europe's isn't able to, or if energy gets too expensive for Europe, then you'll see the economic kind of ripples that'll happen on exports and imports and whatnot, and eventually it'll make its way down to the U.S. But the conflict is, it's having an impact, particularly on the stock market. If you want to think about the stock market as an indicator of expected future cash returns, then the stock market's down, and so you hope that this conflict ends soon, and so that the folks can get back to business. But having a good chunk of energy infrastructure going offline in the Middle East is really bad for the global economy. And we'll leave it there on the weekly wrap up. So thank you, Ryan, for walking us through your thoughts on what
Hmm.
happened this week. It's I really enjoyed the conversation about advisors
Yeah.
helping folks out, because I've been saying that for many episodes now. Like, the advisors are there to help you, like that's their job, and they're really good at
Hmm.
it. And you don't have to be afraid of them. But pivoting towards our special topic, and I want to preface this by saying the stuff that we're talking about on this show is educational purposes. It's not financial advice. If you need a financial advisor, or if you need financial advice, go get a financial advisor. They're there to help you. So just want to put that
Hmm.
out there. You have a really cool newsletter called Think with Ryan,
Hmm.
and you've been publishing your thoughts on it for quite a while now. Do you want to just, before we get into the kind of special topic, I should have said this earlier, but do you want to just introduce us to Think with Ryan, and just tell us, like, how did you come up with this? And
Yeah. So Think with Ryan was inspired by a few factors, but the biggest one is there is way too much unsolicited, unqualified financial advice that you're going to find online. You can find it just by one scroll. And so this is designed to not fill in that gap whatsoever. This is not designed to be financial advice. It's not designed to, lead you a certain way. All this is to reframe your mind to think about something and think about your finances a little bit more clearly once you start to tell a story. Because once you start to tell a story, you start to feel the emotions, you start to feel relatable. And that's what I'm really trying to get at here. And so Think with Ryan is, hey, I am a financial advisor. I'm Come think with me in your story, in your shoes. Think with me through this. And I always leave off with questions because I'm not here to answer them for you. This is for you to answer. Just the same way that, it is not my responsibility to make decisions for clients in a black box. It is our responsibility together to come up with something, come up with an answer for you. And so that's why I always like leading off with questions. Three questions always. They're going to be interpretive, open ended, for people to leave with something to think about. I try to leave it off with, let's tell a story that makes people feel like it relates to them in some way or another. Sometimes I'll hit right on the dot. Sometimes they feel, like they're dipping a toe in the water, that maybe this applies to me. But no matter what, you can always take something away from it and apply it some way or another into your financial life. And so that was the inspiration here. It's not designed to be financial advice. It's just to give you another way of thinking about things.
yeah, that's great. And you posted your most recent one was pretty interesting. It was called "Nearly Having Everything." Can you just walk the audience through just the main points of it? And by the way, folks, like, Think with Ryan, they're really easy reads, so you're not gonna be stuck in terminology that you wouldn't understand and whatnot. Like he really does put efforts into being inclusive for the audience. So check it out, and I'll put a link to it down in the comment section. But do you want to just walk us through like the nearly having everything? Because I thought that one was really fascinating.
Yeah. So the concept as nearly isn't enough. No one is uniquely exempted from this idea that we have everything under control and that everything is following exactly where it's supposed to at the time it's supposed to. That doesn't actually happen in real life. Most people are always at a point where, yeah, I'm almost ready to do this. Yeah, I'm almost ready to get a trust. I'm almost ready to start funding this account. I'm thinking about moving, but I'm just not quite ready yet. There's always something. There's always something that's, hey, I'm close to where I want to be at, but I'm not there yet. And then time just continues ticking by and ticking by. And maybe you started to make progress on it, maybe you didn't. But either way, there's always something next to follow. There's always the next. Oh yeah, yeah, I'm almost done with these shoes, and I'll buy another pair. Then you actually buy that pair, and then you start looking at another pair. It's just a constant flow of, hey, what am I doing? And it's a feedback loop of what am I missing? And you're always going to be missing something. But it also tells a story of there's a finite amount of time in this world, and if you don't actually do the things you want to do and the time you want to do it, nearly doesn't count. There's going to come a time where you're gonna start to think about, hey, what have I done over the period of my career, the time of my life, of my family? Did I do what I needed to do? Because nearly is not enough. No one's gonna say Ryan nearly did this. Nearly doesn't count. I either did it or I didn't. And so it urges. I wrote this to urge people to start thinking about what comes after them, but also what are you doing right now? What are you doing right now for what comes after? What are you doing right now to set yourself up? Maybe you're starting for the first time. Maybe you're starting to think about your financial future for the first time. There's no great place to start. You have to start somewhere. So if you say you're nearly ready, you have to start somewhere. Let's say you have built the wealth and accumulated a lot over the course of your career. What does that mean for you? Well, are you nearly ready to start planning for legacy planning, or did you do it already? There's always going to be something. No one's exempt from it. And so that was kind of this idea of nearly isn't enough. They got it, either did it or you didn't.
Yeah, it reminded me of back when I was working at my old shop, and I went to my old shop right out of college, and I had, I think, $60,000 in debt. And I remember the last kind of paycheck that went to, relieving me of my student debt. I started thinking, okay, now I can kind of build up my retirement. Like this is the time to start planning. But I didn't realize that, like, now I look back on it, I actually started planning my retirement when I started paying that first check into my student debt. But I didn't now I realize that now that, you're right. You need to start, a starting
Hmm.
line. And, you'd be way more effective at, creating that financial future that you want if you are very explicit about creating that starting line. And so that what you just said really resonates with me because it was I did feel like there's no greater financial feeling than when you're rid of your debt. Like whether it's your monthly credit card bills or paying off your car loan or your student debt or the mortgage. There's a really, really good feeling that's associated with that. And so being intentional when you start that journey, I think we can be more intentional doing that because I wasn't. I was just like, yeah, I'm just going to use my monthly checks and bonuses to pay this debt off. But
Yeah. And that's, for the retail market, for those that are not in the financial space whatsoever, that's where financial planning can fall in. Financial planning isn't just, again, it's not just for the uber wealthy where you have to have uh,
yeah,
millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars in order for something to start taking shape. This is for getting answers to simple questions. How do I pay off this debt? How do I start saving towards this? That's
Yeah.
what a financial plan does. It helps steer that conversation, and especially if you're approaching retirement, or let's say you're in retirement, how do I how do I start planning towards my retirement? Like, where can I move? Can I move? Can I sell my home? Can I not do this? Can I move to Europe? Can I do this stuff? Can I go travel the world? All of this stuff helps by planning check-ins and doing all this stuff and seeing, really where does the rubber meet the road, and that comes by financial planning. And so again, consult with an advisor, see if we can get your questions answered, because ultimately an advisor has a fiduciary responsibility to act in your best interest to help guide you in your journey. So
Yeah, do you have any thoughts on just, like, the concept of, like, slowing down, or, like, making the case to slow down for individuals or households that, their lives are pretty busy and they're just go, 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 and they're not thinking about, the financial future? Do you have a case for just slowing down, and I think it's called, like,
yeah,
intentional evolution?
yeah. So that was almost one of the lines that said, "Nearly does not create a finish line or allow for evolution. Planning out your financial future is what helps keep your goals on track." So when we're thinking about slowing down and not just doing everything so rashly, where there's always some next problem, next task, or next chore that we have to do, that's again kind of the whole motto behind Think with Ryan. In order to start making fully educated decisions, you have to slow down. You have to start doing the boring things and start thinking and asking the boring questions, and doing this stuff that you typically wouldn't do if you were not to focus on it. And so let's bring that stuff to the limelight. Let's take a pause. Let's take, out of this weekend, we got Jimmy's soccer game, we got Sarah's softball game, and got all this stuff going on. Let's take Saturday off and let's genuinely think about what we want our financial future to look like. That sounds like a loaded question, but once you start, dotting the i's, crossing the t's, how much is going out each month, how much are we bringing in each month, everything starts to make sense, and it's actually not as difficult as you, you know, thought out it to be. It just requires a little bit of time. It requires slowing down to think this stuff through. So I would encourage people to slow down.
If I was a betting man, I would think that given how everyone's, like, you know, how they manage their household's finances is done automatically now. They're like folks is like, credit card payments are tied to their checking accounts, and their credit card payments you have the option of auto pay, every month or whatnot. Like, I bet you anything that the one time that folks actually sit down and check their household finances is like during tax season, where they're like, "Okay, well, this is the whole sum of everything that's happened last year. Am I gonna get a
Yeah,
check back? Am I gonna, have to pay, the state and the federal government?" And that's probably not the right, approach, based off of what
yeah,
you're saying. It's like we households should be a little bit more intentional and, have much more check-ins than just, like, tax season where they have, like, a sum of all of
yeah.
their,
Well, I would
financials.
push back on that. That's not everybody during tax season. Because what if there's a primary wage earner in the family? What if there's someone that's more adept with handling the day-to-day family finances? What if something happens to them? What's going to happen? Well, now you're asked to step up into a plate where it is totally outside of your wheelhouse because you never had to worry about it before. But now when you're, let's say you're older and you need, you know, more time to yourself and more time to care and relax for yourself. Now's the time where you have to focus on how the heck do I set up auto pay for my credit card instead of, you know, my partner's credit card or something like that, or debit card or bank account. That stuff starts becoming incredibly difficult. And so the only way you start to iron out those possibilities and those potentialities is by getting it done. Nearly isn't enough. You got to do it. And you have to carve out the time to consider, hey, should we take on an accountant? Should we take on a financial advisor? Should we take on XYZ qualified professional to help us out here? Because, there's going to come a time where you just want to do the things you enjoy in life. And, sometimes reaching out for help isn't the worst thing to do.
Yeah, well, that wraps up our show today. I want to say thank you to Ryan for joining us again this week. His newsletter, Think with Ryan, is up on LinkedIn. Do you distribute it via email at all, or is it just LinkedIn?
So short answer, LinkedIn will drop it to your email inboxes as well.
There
So
you
as
go.
long as
Yeah.
as long as you subscribe, we've got just around 250, I think it is, subscribers in the last three months or 4 months or so. So it's moving in the right direction. So yeah, please like, subscribe, share.
Like, subscribe, share. We just talked about Nearly Isn't Enough. It's one of many good pieces that Ryan's put out. So go ahead and check it out. I want to thank the audience members for joining us this week. If you are a financial advisor, an asset manager, wealth manager, planner, and you work for a registered investment advisor, let's keep the conversation going on inflows. You can join us. It's free and free to use. And it's exclusive to the registered investment advisory folks. So I'd love to see you all there. And I hope you all enjoyed this show and have a great weekend. And we'll catch you all next week. Thanks, Ryan.
Take care, everybody. Thank you.